Today's reading comes from Do I Quantum Think? Or no, Do You Quantum Think? By Diane Collins. When you are not getting what you say you want in life, heightened awareness and learning the distinctions of the dynamics of creating enable you to interpret automatic habits and access your real source of power to bring about the results you want. Our habit of thinking is to wanting to know or figure out in advance how something is going to work out. Most of us are not yet very adept in the practice of allowing. Allowing is a facility that operates in the realm of the unimaginable, where the mind cannot see. In the invisible dimension where forces, though they may be unexplainable to us, are in effect nonetheless. We can work with the unseen, first of all, by acknowledging its existence, and secondly, by exercising the facility of allowing. And if you will, take those words into the silence for a few moments with me. And centered right here, right now, in this infinite, wondrous moment of love, I'm knowing that this service is in divine right order, that all progresses in perfection, that we allow the divine to move in and through and as us. And I know that Reverend Cece is allowing that divine mind of the divine that is who she is to speak through her at this service this day. I'm knowing that our children are uplifted and supported and nurtured, and that everything that occurs in this service is in divine right order, and we allow it to be so. And I say, thank you, and so be it, and so it is. Amen.
So in January, it's sort of traditional at Centers for Spiritual Living all over the world to go back to the basics. The basics about what the universe is, what spirit is, by whatever name you want to call it, and how it works and how we interact with it. And so I'm sort of doing that, but I'm putting some twist on it. A little bit different viewpoint, I think, today than I've told you about it, that I've spoken about in the past. And there's a real basic idea that I want to start with, probably the most basic. And the basic idea is that our consciousness is what creates the totality of our experience. all of our consciousness, which means the conscious mind, the one we know about, but also that which we call the subconscious mind and the primitive brain, and it all works together to create our results. And when we allow more into our consciousness, then our experience can expand. This is an enormous idea, and there's lots of layers to it, I think. If we look at it for just a minute, the first thing that we can notice is there's a surface that's real easy to see, and that is that we experience life in our minds, right? I mean, everything that happens to us, we process in our minds. Nothing happens out there unless we take it in and interpret it and assign meaning to it and decide whether it's good or bad and classify it and react emotionally and physically, and we all do that inside our own minds. So the first layer is pretty obvious. What we experience in our minds defines what we call our lives. For example, what happens if somebody comes up to you and pays you a giant compliment? If you're like I used to be, the first thing that happens is your deflector shields come up, right? And you look for the reason why that's not true. We're sort of trained to do this so we don't get big heads, I think. That's the excuse they gave me anyway. I always wanted to see that though. Anyway. The voice in your head will start nattering to you about why this can't be true. Maybe you've changed enough to let it in, however, to let that compliment land in you and accept it and make a little smile happen. I hope so. I hope so. Either way, the experience of that is within you. Someone says something and you react to it and assign meaning to it and experience it. And the same is true if somebody comes up and says something terrible to you. You get to decide whether you want to assign that meaning about you or let it be about them or ignore it. However you do it. It all happens in our own minds. Even our experience of pain happens in our own minds. Like if you have kids, especially little boys, you've probably stepped on a Lego. There's nothing worse. I think I'd rather walk across barbed wire than step on Legos, but you step on the Lego and your skin, receptors in the skin send signals through the spinal cord to the brain, and the brain compares this experience with other experiences and sort of rates it on the pain scale and assigns an emotion to it, and you have all this stuff happening inside yourself. And your experience of stepping on the Lego is going to be different than my experience of stepping on the Lego, and your experience today of the Lego is going to be different than when you stepped on it last week, because so much inside of ourselves has an influence on how we experience it. Your past experiences, your mood, your expectations can all change the way the impulses get interpreted by you. If you just had a fight with your best friend, you're going to react differently than if you just won the lottery, right? The Lego experience will be different for you. The mind is where we experience everything. And the story we tell ourselves in our minds about our lives determines how we experience life in general. So far, so good, right? The next thing we usually say is, change your thinking, change your life. It's sort of our watchword. If your experience is in your mind and you change the contents of your mind, then you change your experience. And here's the issue. We change our thinking in our conscious minds. Remember that Lego? Everything from the awareness of stepping on it to the meaning of the experience of stepping on it happens in places that aren't conscious. It all happens sub rosa, so to speak. It happens in the subconscious and the primitive mind. The comparison to the other experiences in our past, or the Lego we stepped on last week, the meaning we assign to it, the way we look out there for someone to blame. Where is that kid? I'm going to kill him. He left his Legos out again. All of that stuff happens in a split second in our subconscious or our preconscious mind. And so changing those deep and interconnected networks of response and assignment and rating and calibration and filing and meaning making, we have to take a little bit different approach to. Changing our whole consciousness, the totality of our consciousness, I think, requires us to tell a new story about ourselves, a new story about the way the universe works and where we stand in it and how we interact with it. And we have to replace the old story with a new story that sort of better reflects who we are and what we know about ourselves and what we want to experience. We have to tell one that's big enough to let us have a new experience. Most of the time what we do is tell the same old story, and so we keep having the same old experiences over and over and over again. I imagine it's possible to decide that stepping on a Lego doesn't hurt. I don't know that I want to go there yet, but I think it's probably possible. And I imagine there are some people who can do it and not have it do what it does to me, which is reduce me to a heap on the floor. I must have sensitive feet, I don't know. But I started to talk last week a little bit about the fundamental changes we have to make in the story in order to live larger lives. The biggest one, I think, is that we've grown up in the West particularly because we don't have some of the tradition of spiritual practice that has happened in the Eastern religions and in places where religion in its best sense is part of life. Spirituality and experience of the divine is part of life. We've grown up with the notion that we're separate beings. I am me and you are you, and we really don't touch each other, and what I do only affects me. I used to smoke cigarettes and drink a whole lot of alcohol, and I always said, well, I'm only messing with myself. And that's not true. And we know that now. We know that what we do impinges on everything, and what happens out there impinges on us. It's something the mystics have told us forever, but science is now catching up. We are interbeing. We are the universe as a whole, and we're all in that whole. And whenever we do something, it affects others, whether it's destructive and negative or wonderful and positive. If I am doing wonderful things, it reaches out to touch other people. And if I'm doing destructive things, it reaches out to touch other people. And whenever something happens out there, it impacts me. That's the first notion, I think, helps us move our center of gravity a little bit from me and mine to we and ours, to the fact that we are a whole. And I want to make one more statement about that idea. I am not suggesting that you sacrifice yourself to the whole. That's part of the old story, and a lot of us have told ourselves that. It's part of the old story, is I can't have my stuff, I can't have what I want because it's going to take away from somebody else. The new story says, there's enough. Man, there is enough. You can have yours, but we just have to make room in our thinking that there is this interconnection between all of us. When we make decisions, we consider the impact individually, but we also consider the impact on the whole. And we make the best decision that we can make, balancing those things out. That's where our deepest self keeps moving us to. If you'll notice, when you have an experience of something larger, of that larger life, it's as though your boundaries dissolve. And you can almost sense that you're one with everything. That's what our deepest self is moving us to. And it's also the direction that empowers us to be and do and have bigger lives. The second thing I think we have to replace in the old story is that the world, stuff out there, matter, is solid and static. We've always believed that matter is solid and static, and the mystics and science are now in agreement that that's not accurate. But when I grew up, we were taught that matter was made up of atoms, and atoms were sort of like little plum puddings. You know, you had a nucleus in there somewhere, and then there was this bunch of electrons like studded in the pudding, and one atom abutted the atom next to it and made up a solid and static thing. That's not how it is. You know, the electron, or the electrons are made up of even smaller particles called leptons, I think. And the nucleus, the protons, are made up of even smaller particles, quarks and stuff like that. And the nucleus and its quarks are like a little tiny dot, and then there's this big area like 100,000 times bigger than that little tiny dot where the electrons dance. So 99.9999999% of the atom is space. It's not solid, and it's not static. Stuff is always changing. Reality is always changing. It is in constant flux and movement. It doesn't even exist as matter until and unless somebody observes it. It's possibility otherwise, right? It's possibility. The whole universe was possibility until a consciousness collapsed it into form, which is what science is telling us these days. We have to observe it in order for it to be, in order for it to take form. We've known about this for about 100 years. We're still telling our kids, it's not quite the plum pudding model, but it's close. We're still teaching our kids that there's this nice little round ball with nice little perfectly circular orbits around it. We're really not teaching them that it's all moving and all in flux and all changing all the time. We're not teaching them, for example, that one of those electrons can go from here to here without traversing the space in between. Now that's weird. That's really weird, but it's true. I wonder if we told our kids that, if their minds would go boing and open up to something bigger. I don't know. But we were still teaching them sort of a version of the plum pudding model of reality. We still think of this as solid and stable and never changing. We focus on the material rather than the space. We focus on the particles and not the waves. We focus on the whole instead of everything that happens to create that whole. We're still thinking mechanically and mechanistically, even though we have some idea, some theory that fits the facts better. When we start to change that story, we shift our thinking from the way things are into the way things might be. What are all the possibilities? What are the possibilities that we could take all these atoms and turn them into something different? Wow! We could do lots of things with these atoms. What are the possibilities with any situation we might have that is a certain way? What could we imagine we could turn it into? What are the possibilities for us? When we change the story, we start to understand that there's nothing is permanent. Nothing. Nothing is permanent. Not our circumstances, not our experience, not the matter, not the state of the world. None of that is permanent. When we start to allow a bigger space for possibility, then we allow for new circumstances to start to unfold. We start to allow space for a new world, a new way of living to come about. The only reason things are the way they are is because we invest our energy in keeping them that way. So if we invest our energy in creating something different, that's what we get. That's what we get. We have to stop telling ourselves that old story. And I think another thing we have to start replacing in the old story is that someone or something out there is making it happen. Someone or something out there is responsible for me feeling a certain way, or me reacting a certain way, or me being in a certain place in my life. I think that springs from the thing I just talked about, that matter is static and solid, that life is static and solid, that experience just is the way it is. we believe that other people's matter can affect our matter. And this is probably the most difficult place to change our mechanistic thinking into possibility thinking. It's one of the most difficult, I think, to bring up into our consciousness so that we can even look at it, because, like the Lego, we have learned to assign blame in a split second. You know, it happens in our conscious mind, but all the connections that happen before it are sort of below that. And bingo, we know who to blame. We know who's at fault here. We believe that other people's matter can affect our matter. We believe that other people's emotions can affect our emotions. The reason, because it's so difficult to sort of bring this into consciousness, sometimes it's easier to work backwards. Like to simply, when we find ourselves blaming or assigning responsibility to someone or something, to stop and allow ourselves to notice that we're doing it. And allow ourselves to notice what our inner state underneath that is. It's usually kind of agitated. If you're just a little bit miffed, simply noticing will change things for you. If you're really angry or really upset or really sad, sometimes you have to notice a little bit longer. Sometimes you just have to keep noticing and keep allowing for the fact that your inner landscape can change. What we usually tend to do is the blame pops into our minds and we grab it and run with it. And we try to figure out what we have to do. If we can simply allow ourselves to notice and allow ourselves to notice with some space around it, things start to adjust. They start to adjust. See, we all know in our minds that reality is malleable, that it's context dependent. We all know in our minds that we create our own life experience. We all know about quantum theory, but our thinking is stuck in the industrial age rather than the quantum age. And so we have to move it, because otherwise all we have is information when what we're after is transformation. And transformation happens, and I think we want it because it is that deeper way of approaching life that inner self is always calling us to. And the very first thing we have to do to step into transformation is to allow that things can be different. Remember I talked about last week awareness rather than knowing? Awareness is open and spacious, and knowing is tight and confining. So allowing is the same way. Allowing is spacious and grabbing onto the circumstances, the reason, the cause is tight and confining. When we begin by regarding ourselves as interbeing, we're each part, a necessary part of a whole that's so interwoven that I don't know where it ends and you begin, where I end and you begin, and vice versa. We begin by regarding ourselves as the meaning makers in our own lives. Not someone out there or something out there or something our teacher taught us in third grade or something our parents told us. No one but ourselves can assign meaning or context to our experience. And we can't do it for anybody else. We can try to open our minds and understand people, but still the meaning that they assign is up to them. We begin, I think, by acknowledging what our founder Ernest Holmes said. He said, most of the world operates under the law of averages. You know the bell curve? Most of us are stuck right there based on what we're taught. But if we allow ourselves, we can move into the leading edge, the far edge of the curve, where things are different, where things are not prescribed by the way people think, where possibility opens up to us. We can stop telling the old story and tell a new one anytime. And we begin by cultivating awareness, which lets us enlarge what we're seeing. We can consider more about reality when we're in awareness than when we're in how can I figure this out mode. And when we allow for just possibility to open up in front of us. It's not, we don't go for an answer and then strive to make it so. We're open to whatever different outcome might come to us, whatever different outcome might suggest itself, whatever different outcome is possible, not foreseeable, possible. There's a big difference. And I think the way we first start allowing is by remembering to breathe. Believe it or not, it sounds so simple, but it's so essential. If we just take a breath, we can feel ourselves open up. We can feel ourselves create space within ourselves. Allowing is open space. That's really what it is. When you're faced with a situation or a problem or a question and you loosen, you let yourself loose about it, ask what the possibilities are. And don't forget to breathe. Breathing is good. Breathing allows more and more and more possibility to appear, to unfold itself, to come up in response to the situation or the question or the person or the circumstance. And when you do this, when you just let the possibilities open, interesting things will happen. You know exactly what they are. There's going to be a voice that says, sounds good in your dreams. Or one that says, there's no way you can afford it, do it. I don't have I need. There's all these voices that come up with. Whatever no you tell yourself, just keep breathing and be aware of it. Because in awareness, there's room for the no to have its say, and there's still room for the possibilities to keep unfolding. So take a deep breath and thank your mind for showing you the limits of your own thinking. That's all it is. It's just showing you the limits up to this moment of your own thinking. And let yourself be aware of the places you believe your old story about your weight, or your looks, or your intelligence, or your job, or your bank account, or whatever it is. Whatever it is. And remind yourself that reality is not fixed, but malleable. That you have no obligation to be the person you were 5 minutes ago. You have no obligation to stay the same. You have no obligation to stay in an old story or an old reality. Because you are part of this great wholeness that fills the entire universe. And so let yourself tell a new story. If you see a possibility that lifts you up and makes you feel larger, you see a possibility and it just feels like you took a big deep breath, follow it. See where it leads. You might see another possibility along the way that causes even a more wonderful response in you. When we tell a new story, when we allow the new story to contain possibilities that we don't know how to make happen, that's when we step out into that interbeing space. We step out into that larger space of seeing what the universe is going to do. How is the universe going to make this happen? When we take a deep breath around all of it and keep possibility flowing, then our imagination will swing out into the previously unseen, into the inexplicable, into the, I don't know how that could happen, but I'm willing to allow that it could. We have a new story that's open to the infinite, a new story that we can begin to believe because we've created space for it in our own being. And when we can tell a new story that is about our highest and best, about our greatest possibilities, about our most beautiful dreams, then we can begin to lean in that direction. And the universe, this great interbeing that we're part of, supports us. Every breath, every step, the whole way. And so I invite you to take your sense of possibility into the silence for a moment as we pray together. And the kind of prayer that we do around here we call affirmative prayer, because it's simply about stating what we know in our deepest selves to be the truth. And so right in this moment, I recognize the great interbeing that I call spirit, that I call God, that I call the universal intelligence, that intelligence and power and wisdom that caused everything in the universe to come into being by means I cannot even begin to understand. All I know is that it happened. First there was nothing. Then there was some tiny dot that contained all being and all matter and all energy that then bloomed and blossomed and exploded into the universe. And the same power and presence and wisdom and intelligence behind that is everywhere I look, everywhere I breathe, everywhere I am. And because it created everything from itself, I know that includes me. It includes everyone in this room. That intelligence and life and power and wisdom lives in each one of us as us.
I am just a thread, a simple thread in this glorious web of life. We are all just drops within a stream flowing towards an ocean of light. We may forget where we come from, we may forget where we're going to. I might not see that you're a reflection of me as much as I'm a reflection of you.
And so in this beautiful reflection of light, I speak my word for each person here. I know that each one of us opens ourselves to all that the universe has to offer, not condensing and claiming and demanding and knowing how it's all going to work out, but simply swinging out into the infinite, opening ourselves to allowing all of the good that the universe has to offer to make its way into form by means of us, to be our very lives, allowing all of the love and abundance and health and prosperity and beauty and goodness and kindness and compassion of the world to happen because we allow it. And I know that each one of us just breathes in this allowing into our lives, into our feelings, into our thoughts, into all that we do.
I am just a seed, a blessed seed with eternity unfolding in me. And I pray that as I grow, I will reveal the love that illuminates my soul. When I remember where I come from, when I remember where I'm going to, then I will see that you're a reflection of me as much as I'm a reflection of you.
And so I give thanks. I give thanks for this time we have had together to celebrate life itself. I give thanks for the unfolding of spirit, of the universe, by means of each one of us. I give thanks in anticipation for all that we will bring forth. I give thanks for life itself. Knowing that the universe is always supporting us, is always saying yes to us, and knowing that they are already so, they are already coming into form as we speak them, as we allow them into our consciousness. So I just let go, knowing that the universe says yes, and we say together, and so it is.
This This is my simple prayer.
Join us.
May I become a reflection of the infinite one. This is my simple prayer. May I become a reflection of the infinite one. This is my simple prayer. May I become a reflection of the infinite one. This is my simple prayer. May I become a reflection of the infinite one.
And now we have an opportunity to give in support of this center and its work, and also a moment just to remember all of our blessings. The bed we got out of this morning that was so warm and cozy. The house that protects us from the cold. The food we have to eat, the friends, the love, this community, and all that it offers. Life itself, what a gift. So I invite you to just be grateful, to allow yourself to fill with spontaneous gratitude whenever you remember how blessed and how beautiful you are. And I invite you, as the basket goes by and you touch it, whether you give or not, to simply bless the abundance of this community so that we continue to grow, so that we continue to do more and more in the community in support of our very life together. And let's affirm together. Gratefully I give with an attitude of abundance.
Gratefully I give with an attitude of abundance.
I know that as I give, so do I receive.
I know that as I give, so do I receive.
And so it is.
And so it is.
This little bluesy thing we got going on here today. So I have a couple of quick announcements. It's our annual meeting, and Keith is going to come talk about that in just a second. It's right after the service. And then this coming Friday at 7 p.m., we will host a showing of a movie called White Like Me. And it's about hidden racism and how it damages all of us. And it's also about the origins and what white privilege really is. And here's the clue: it's not your fault. It's what we learned from our society. So you can come and learn about how to recognize it in yourself and how to sort of step aside from it and let it go. I think it's going to be a really great occasion, and it's Dayton-wide community. We've invited the whole community through a couple of organizations here in town, because we're coming up on the Season for Peace and Nonviolence, which begins on Martin Luther King Day. So this is sort of a precursor to that. Also take a look at the back of your program insert for lots more things coming up. And I'm going to turn the mic over to Keith to talk about a couple of things here. Keith is our core council president. Keith Gunderklein.
Thanks. Two things. First, that I think most of you have seen for the last 6 months, I guess it's been now, it's hard to believe it's been that long, our bi-monthly newsletter. We're at the time where we are getting ready to run the next edition to be printed up for February and March. And I want to let people know that we are looking for another round of people who want to advertise in this newsletter. Just a quick little tidbits of information about it. We print out about 440 of these. Again, it's a 2-month newsletter. In addition to being available here at the center every Sunday, we have a group of people in our community awareness team who takes these out to places like health food stores, libraries, coffee shops, restaurants, healing centers, etc. So there's a pretty wide range, and if we get more ads, if a lot of people come up, we'll just print more newsletters too, so it's all good. The other thing, I just want to let people know, any members, long-term attenders here, that we're giving a 20% discount for people who, from here, to put ads in, as opposed to we're trying to get some area businesses also to be in here. They'll be more at the higher rate. But if you want more information about some of the rates and the dimensions and so on of ads, you can talk to Clara in the office. Would be very good. We've got, I think, 2 weeks. We have to have everything committed for that space. So I just want to encourage anybody, if you want to do that, to promote your business organization and support the center at the same time, it's a great way to do both those things. And as Reverend Cece was saying, we have the annual meeting today right after the service. We'll give everybody about 10-15 minutes to kind of get drinks, get settled, come back in here. I think it's a little bit warmer in here, and hopefully we'll need this much space for people who want to stick around. So we'll have the election and of our annual election, and then after that we're going to ask people to stick around and talk a little bit more about visions and ideas moving forward for the center. And anybody, any member, any long-term attenders, please stay. If you're fairly new and you're not sure, you're still welcome to stick around and observe. That's perfectly fine also. So hope to see you all then. Thanks.
Thank you.
We have soup today, yes?
Yes, we have.
We have soups in the social hall, and we've already dropped a couple cakes and stuff on the floor, so you can bring your food back in here. It'll be okay. The carpet is not brand new. I think I dropped something right there. I think it was an oil lamp right there. We've dropped a few things, so don't worry about it. Go and get some soup and come on back in for the meeting. If you would like prayer after the service for anything at all, if you're having a great life and you just want more, or there's something that you can't quite see your way through, please ask one of the prayer practitioners. They have the teal or white shawl on, and just ask them for prayer, and they'll take it from there. Or they do this as a gift to you after the service because they know how they've been working for years to know how to see the truth even when you can't. And that is their gift to you after the service. And there's also a chest back there where you can put a written prayer request and just leave it in that chest on the table by the door, and the practitioners pick those up and pray throughout the week for you. So I think that is it from me, except that we have our closing affirmation and our closing song, Stand. I know, Kenny, you are standing up. So everybody else, stand up. And repeat after me. The wholeness of the universe is seeking expression through me.
The wholeness of the universe is seeking expression through me.
Its nature is goodness, truth, beauty, and wisdom.
Its nature is goodness, truth, beauty, and wisdom.
I allow it to shine through me today and always.
I allow it to shine through me today and always.
And so it is.
And so it is.
Have a wonderful week, and we'll see you at the meeting.